Now we are live.
We are live on Friday evening, coming to you from Paradiso Integrale in Umbria, Italy. We're interrupting our busy olive harvest to bring you this special edition of Conversations That Matter with a special guest from Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. Right?
Something is happening here.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I'm going to turn something off.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Technical things. All right. And I was about to introduce our special guest today, Tom Christensen, who happens to live in a place where I spent many of my decades, Madison, Wisconsin, which I remember fondly very much. Say hello, Tom.
Hello from Madison. Yes, it's still a wonderful place.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And we, in the meantime, are bringing this series to you in sort of as a preparation for a longer series that we're beginning next month. And this segment may serve as a bit of an introduction to that series. The series will be about aging and ageism, and all that implies, and in all four quadrants, which I think Tom may explain
Certainly
later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge topic, and one that, its time has come. Like in the 60s, we had the end to racial discrimination. In the 70s, women's liberation.
You are already inside of the discussion. You haven't said who you are.
They don't know who I am?
No.
Isn't that written somewhere?
We have no lower today.
Yeah, that's one of the technical things.
I'm
Mark Davenport, and I'm here with...
I'm Heidi Hornlein,
Yes.
and we are representing the wisdomfactory.net. So if you go to our website, you will find all the series we have already done, almost all of the videos, but at least the descriptions you will find, and I'm busy putting all the videos up there for you. It will be about 100 at the end of the previous series. And there's also the announcement of the coming series, which is called Conscious Aging. But today, we have the topic, what's integral about our doing and our being, and we will use it for an introduction to the aging series.
Yes, we shall.
Good. So maybe we should begin with talking a little bit what integral is, because maybe not everybody knows what that means. I mean, in Italian, we have Paradiso Integrale as the name of our place and association. And in Italian, pane integrale, this means bread. Integral bread means brown bread. So people don't really know what we mean.
With bread it means, yes.
With integral. So we...
But first, Tom has to tell the folks who he is.
Okay.
And then we can move in.
Okay.
All right.
All right. It's my turn to step in, I think.
And to say who you are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm still Tom Christensen. I have been a student of integral studies, and particularly Cleric W. Graves and his work in that field for over 15 years. And that is a direct extension out of an inquiry that began when I was 19. So in one sense, I've been doing this. I'm 69. The topic is going to be aging, so you should know where I'm at on that continuum. But the question that drove me, it caught me when I was 19. It just said, what is a human? What is human nature? What is going on here? And in that inquiry, I went through Eastern psychology, Western psychology, philosophies from both sides, a master's in South Asian studies, a PhD program that I didn't finish in Western psychology, and kept looking until the integral model showed up. And boy, I've been into that for 15 years. And I feel like it's finally, I've reached the pinnacle of what I wanted to get out of it. And I think I need to give you a little summary about what that view of the world is so you can understand where we're going from here on in. We talk about worldviews or points of view, belief systems. The integral worldview is not the answer you've been searching for all your life and now you're done. When you get to integral, you really realize that, oh, my life is like living inside of a building. And I can look at the world out there through a window on this side, or I can look out at the world through a window on the other side of the building. And which one I pick doesn't make one more right than the other. One just reveals a different landscape than the other. And that's the way you should take the integral model. It is a tool, if you will, especially useful when you have a problem. My problem was, what is human nature? So it's a philosopher's problem. But if your problem is raising your children or dealing with having retired and what do you do now, if you have a problem, that's when you want to turn to this. Just learning it for learning's sake, maybe some people could do that, but I don't see the value in it. And now quickly, I'll see if I can summarize 15 years of inquiry in about 2 minutes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So you're trying to understand something and you look out there and the amount of information you can get a hold of is way too much for anybody to get their head around. We can learn anything about anything almost immediately. So how are you going to narrow this down to something useful? Well, draw a line in front of yourself that's horizontal and put everything that's information about individuals on top of that line and everything that has to do with groups of people below that line. All right, now we've at least got 2 piles of information and we simplified it a little, but now let's draw a line through vertical through the middle of that, and everything on the left side will have to do with the interior of things. So that would be like your spirituality, your psychology, your dreams, or if the collective area, we'd think that's your culture, your family of origin, those sorts of things. And then on the right side of the line, we'll put everything that has to do with exterior things that you can really see and measure. So now we've got 4 quadrants. So we've got 4 piles of information that are really well defined. So up in the upper right quadrant, we have things you can measure about individuals. So if I'm wondering who you are, I want to know how tall you are, how your eyes work. You know, is your heart healthy? Maybe I want to know your hair color because I'm a design consultant. That real physical measurable things. But then surprisingly, if I want to know you, I should go to that lower right quadrant and ask what kind of social systems, what sort of external designed collectives of humans are there that make my life what it is. My life would be certainly different if I didn't have access to education or healthcare or fire protection or police protection or the taxation systems or the political representation systems. So all that's in the lower right. Upper right is individual. Upper left is your interior, your dreams, your hopes, your memories, your skills. And lower left is your culture, your belief system that you share with other people that I have to come to you and ask you about because it's not right on the surface. Now, that's the basic integral paradigm. If you want to know what something is, you put it right in the middle of that crosshairs that we've developed, and you say, put the object of inquiry right there. And if I want an integral understanding, I'll have to still use my judgment. You can't go for a list here. You have to use your own discernment, but what information out of each of those quadrants do I need to pull forth that will give me a full rounded understanding of the object of inquiry? All right, now, if my looking at something is from a 4-year-old's point of view, I'm going to get different information showing up than if I'm a 24-year-old or a 50-year-old or an 80-year-old. How do I account for that? Take that crosshair and now imagine there's an axis that allows you to move it forward and backward. So as you start out, let's say it's where you were born, it's just about at a 0 point of what we call cognitive complexity. But then you grow a little bit more and you're no longer baffled by what is 10. You can even count to that number just before they go into the teens. Wow. And then later I can even to 100. So we know there's complexity continues to grow. Well, as it grows, let's push that quadrant back farther along that continuum, and everything in the matrix we've designed changes its meaning based on where it is on that axis of cognitive maturation. And that brings in the Graves model of these different levels of development. In that axis that's going backward and forward, we measure cognitive development, maturation. And that together gives us a really holistic view of what is of interest to us. Now, what might be interesting to us? Well, aging is certainly a matter for many of us. The whole baby boomer bulge in the python is coming through that experience. And that means a lot of people are going to find this a relevant topic. Well, what is it about aging we're curious about? Well, if you just ask that, you've got the infinite universe of information and you're bowled over and at least whelmed, if not overwhelmed. So we have to simplify it again. Let's look in the upper quadrant and say, well, what is aging? What matters about aging up there? Well, is my mind going to continue to work as good as it is? Because I fear it may not. All right. So cognitive capacities might diminish, but they also might continue to increase. There is a subset of human beings whose cognitive complexity continues to grow no matter how old they get. So is that going to be us? And how do I prepare for that? Or how do I honor that? Because that's going to make me see things different than my people earlier on that continuum will see them. Well, then we look up in the upper right quadrant, aging. What has that got to do? Oh, my body's not going to be doing what I did when I was 25. All right, what is significant to me about that? And, we can begin to carry the inquiry out there. But also, let's look in the lower right quadrant. Say, well, what social systems do I have to plug into? If I don't have a healthcare system around me, it's going to be a different aging experience than if the hospital's across the street. And then let's look in the lower left. What does my culture say about an elder here? If my culture doesn't have an element of respect for age, then I'm going to have to fight for credibility. Or I might just want to step out of that culture. But at least now I know where the problem is. It's that people around me don't recognize that I'm still growing. Oh, that's a lower left quadrant problem. It's not a pervasive all four quadrant problem. It's located right there. Now I can narrow my focus down and do something about that issue. So that's a quick summary of how we would approach aging from an integral perspective.
Thank you very, very, very much.
That was a
wonderful.
Yes,
Wonderful.
a 5-minute overview that's really, really packed and to the point. That's great. Thank you.
And
What I could go, unless you want to direct me somewhere, let me point out what Graves said were the levels of cognitive complexity that we go through and how we differentiate them. Because listeners will be able to see themselves here as the little child and as what their life issues were as they matured. And for some of us, it'll show us the life issues we still have ahead of us, perhaps. We never know how far we're going to develop in cognitive complexity, and we don't know how to make it happen. There's nobody that can make your scope. And when we talk cognitive complexity, it's really what's the scope of information you can manage. Very low cognitive complexity will find it novel to put a nut on a bolt again and again and again. And you and I will sit there and say, my, that's boring. But we mustn't project our level of complexity onto other people. If we want to really understand humans, then there's some people who that next nut is, wow, look at this nut. It is brand new. On the other end of the continuum, we will have people.
Yes. That. I think this is very, very important that we begin to understand that, because out of my life, for instance, I was together with a partner who enjoyed to sit in Otricoli in the little town together with other people and playing cards. And I said, how can they do that? It is so boring. And so, I was just in another space and I couldn't understand, and I diminished it, denigrated it.
Yeah.
And when I came into the integral understanding, and as you say, for them, that's life. For me, oh gosh, sitting there and passing time without any real, saving the world or something idea. So it is very, very, very important that we respect and see what other people do and what meaning it has for them, and not what we would do, And I think it's most of the misunderstanding and most of the quarrels and wars between people, also between husbands and wives and family members, is because of that, because they don't respect each other's, how can you say, way of feeling fulfilled.
Difference, yes. Well, here's the thing, is that human beings are basically good. I mean, if you watch around you and you see the interactions with humans, getting on a bus, walking down the street, opening a door, people are constantly kind to each other. It's so small we ignore this, but if you begin looking, it's kindness is the way humans operate together. And one of the things we've learned to be kind is not to differentiate, not to put ourselves above somebody or better than somebody. Well, if we have that admonition and we begin to see human differences, we generate a conflict because we see that somebody doesn't have the cognitive complexity that I do. Oh, but should I pay attention to that? Because that makes them less than me, doesn't it? Only if you stay in that paradigm. If you begin from the position that if you are born, you have all of the worth that any human being can have. By showing up here in a body, you deserve all of the honor and respect that any human being is. You get through that vagina and start breathing, you have hit the pinnacle right there. In terms of human being, you don't get better after that. You start out at the pinnacle of preciousness. So if you start the game from there, I already respect you to your very core. And in order for me to love you with any artfulness, I have to recognize where we're different. Otherwise, I'll be a bull in a china shop. And just like you learned, come on, give up those cards. My God, what are you doing? And then you realize, wait, that's how he loves his friends.
Yep.
I need to let him be. And if it doesn't work for me, maybe we have to go in different directions, but not because there's something wrong with him. So, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I may, then I'll segue back into those levels. So the first one, and everybody listening will see their own lives in this, because it's really only mapping what human nature does naturally. We show up as little babies, and our basic concern, what we call our existential question that is at the core of all our behaving, is how can I be comfortable? How can I be comfortable? That's where a baby's at. Touch me, feed me, hold me, warm me. You do that and the baby's quiet. Everything is okay. Well, what happens with this natural evolution that's in us, the cognitive complexity grows to a point where, I notice there's other people around me. There's mom, there's a dad, there's uncle, there's, and there's a world, and maybe there's even a boogeyman under my bed. And that's that next level where we wake up into this world where there are other beings and we don't quite understand it, but it's bigger than us and it's very unpredictable, and I'm frightened. So the second level existential concern is, how do I stay safe? How do we be safe? It's an interesting thing. As we grow up through this trajectory, sometimes we're about us and me, sometimes I'm about me, and sometimes I'm about us. And it just flows back and forth in a strangely nice pattern. So that second one is, how do we be safe? Mom, Dad, are we safe? And if we are, then I'm okay. Except for that boogeyman under the bed. Mom, can you do something about that? And she'll say, yeah, I just talked to him and fed him some boogeyman food. He won't bother you tonight. Whatever it takes. But after a while, for some of us, if the conditions around us are right, and that's what's important, what are the conditions around us and what are our capacity? The next thing we emerge into is, I'm here in this bunch of we. And I don't want to. I want. this terrible twos emerges where the individualness begins to pull out from the group. And that can happen at normal in our culture. It happens around 2, but a culture can stay at that level forever. If you have warlords in a group, they can't go past that. Not because there's something wrong with them, but because their capacity and life conditions only make that way of being possible. That's all. There's too much threat around to go beyond covering your butt, being the toughest guy on the block, or else making sure he's your friend. Mm-hmm. So that terrible twos is about power, control, territory, mine. And that's very necessary. What can happen, though, is that after a while, it's all you're doing is fighting, and that doesn't work very good. And if you've got cognitive complexity increasing, you start thinking there's got to be a better way. Just has to be. And if you look through history, that question has been answered over and over. Hammurabi came up with a code. Old Testament came up with the 10 Commandments. We have laws and rules and manners. All sorts of things begin to come into play to contain that powerful, we call these levels different colors. That terrible twos is a red level. So you need to contain it. You don't want to repress it and kill it because that's too much vitality. You want to channel it. So you learn good manners. And that's what most of industrial society is at this blue level where everybody has learned pretty good manners and are operating, being nice to each other and moving along. Kind of a pretty good agreement about why we're here and what the purpose is, and we want to do the right thing. For many people, that will be where they will be all their lives. They will retire, they will get their gold watch in retirement, and their life will be fulfilled. Some of us, though, get restless, and we begin to ask questions like, really? God did that in 6 days, and then he rested? There's a lot of people work more than 6 days and don't rest. How come he had to rest? Those kind of questions come up, and you start thinking, well, maybe the truths that I believed, maybe they all aren't so true. And that's a movement into the next level, what we call the orange achiever level. It says, well, I want to find out what's really true. So we go out and we try our ideas. And the ideas that work, those are the ideas we begin to give our allegiance to. Not the ones we told were from God, which is where the blue, some authority told us what the truth was. We accepted it and we followed it. But if our cognitive scope enlarges, that doesn't work so well anymore. And now it's what's so? It's whatever produces the results I'm after. A very functional kind of measure of truth. And that requires stepping outside of what you believed. That's a whole new human capacity to be able to look at your thinking. And that's what happens at Orange, just barely. It's the first budding of what we call objectivity. Well, after a while, you go out and you start testing your own ideas and you try to do what you can do outside of the box you grew up in. And so you write your book, you make your painting, you do your dance, you build your buildings, you build your fortune, and then you say, well, is that all there is? I got all the stuff, I got all the toys, I got all the money, I got all the awards. It just doesn't feel, I'm lonely. And that's the opening up into the next level. If you have the capacity and if the life conditions support it, you then open your heart and begin to say, well, boy, if I had all these great ideas, maybe you have great ideas, and maybe you do, and maybe it would benefit me if I listened to you. So I begin to open myself up and be more inclusive. So I get ideas like Gaia and multiculturalism and diversity. And that's built on a much more complex appreciation of what's so on the planet. There's a strange thing about that loving, open, embracing, inclusion kind of mentality, though, is it isn't very effective. It's essentially powerful for building relationships. But for producing results that solve the big problems, it's impotent. And that is felt when one begins to reach the end of that green phase. It's, wait a minute, there's just too many problems we're not addressing here. There's got to be more. And that opens up, if the next transition is available to you, you have the capacity and you've got the right life conditions around you, you open up into a huge new scope. We call it the second tier. It's a cognitive complexity that's more than twice what it was at the previous level. So this means that we now, and every time there's more complexity, there's new capacities. So many of us listening here, and I'm sure you two know about taking different perspectives. So look at it this way. Wow. Well, look at it this way. Or let me get in your shoes and see just what it feels like from your point of view. That's called multi-perspectival cognition. And 50 years ago, there was almost nobody on the planet that could do that. And you take it as common. You don't even question it. You just do it that way. Well, what's important about this developmental model is to recognize, like we go back to your husband playing cards again, is that this is different. My mind now is different. I actually can stand in your shoes. And if you can't stand in my shoes, it isn't because there's something wrong with you. It's because you're earlier on that maturation trajectory. And if I'm really devoted to love and caring and being a healthy contribution to the one life on the planet, then I need to respect and honor you where you are. I can do for you. So I have to see what those differences are. You can't think in multi-perspectival cognition mode. Oh, I get it. Or
and you
how
don't
about
have
this?
to blame the other person anymore, no?
No, right. Like here's another ability you have. Self-definition. For a long time as we grow up, we look for who we are. And along the way, we kind of get comfortable with who we are. But then a little farther along the way, we notice who we think we are. That ability to be bigger than our identity is a profound new capacity for human being. I call it transegoic. You know, I can see myself in the world in a bigger scope than my identity can. And then we can go off in tangents. Some people want to kill that identity. Some people want to honor it. I think honoring is the only way to do it. It's like, yeah, it's my tool. I need to have an identity. If I don't show up like Tom, I'm not going to be able to talk and share ideas with you. But I have to watch Tom. If Tom gets too much about Tom, then I got to like shift him because that's not what we're doing here. So there's that bigger witness level. That's new. Most people don't have that. And if you ask them to get over yourself, I mean, tell that to a 22-year-old. That's like asking them to fly. You got as good a chance of making it happen either way. So, you know, it's respecting people where they're at. And then you need to have a framework to understand where people are at so that you can be artful. I mean, that's the heart of Buddhism, is artful action.
I want to come in there because you say 22-year-old. It doesn't always depend on age.
No.
In a sense, yes, but not really. So
Yeah,
I think there are many young people today around 30 who are already very advanced in their development.
Way ahead of where we were.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, totally. I mean, this is, in fact, part of my mission when I have one is my belief is that many, many younger people have emerged into second tier, but nobody told them. They don't have a mirror that shows them who they've become, because any moment you're only who you are. I mean, how in the world would you think how do you get outside of yourself to wonder who you are compared to others? It's not an easy cognitive move to make when you can only have one frame of reference in your mind at a time that you're aware of. So how can I know how I'm different than I was before? You can't hold those two images together. So somebody has to come along and say to you, do you know that you're thinking in multi-perspectival cognition?
Wow.
Yeah. No kidding. Look, this is what it is. And they say, oh, I know what that means. Or if I tell transnarrative cognition, try that one. What is he talking about? Well, when you study something really difficult and you really put your attention on it and you try to understand it and that understanding emerges, does it show up like a sentence with a period at the end and another sentence? No, it shows up in this knowing, this kind of volumetric apperception. Yeah, you get it all at once. That Hornlein or whatever his name, and you grok it.
Yeah.
All right, that is a high cognitive capacity, a very mature cognitive capacity, and it's different, and it becomes natural, normal, the usual, when second tier is available. Now, tell kids that, and that's a rarely important, I mean, that's the kind of vision you need of the planet to be able to emerge solutions to it. You can't take a blue level, what's the rules, what's the order, and look at the planet and generate a solution to climate problems from that simpler blue point of view. It just can't see the problem. And really, in politics, there are people that aren't buying into climate change. It isn't because they're stupid. They just don't have the complexity to see the whole planet. They're just looking at the city they live in, and it doesn't look like it's happening here. Right? Well, and I want to say, oh, they're really stupid, but they're not. That's just the scope they can comprehend. And if we want to solve the problem, remember we got it green and we saw how big the problems were and we couldn't solve them. Well, our mind has this funny way of catalyzing a change that produces a capacity that can solve the problem. This transnarrative knowledge, knowing, gives us the apperception of the whole planet and all the interdynamics of it that we can't speak at once, but we can see, feel, know. And out of that, we can emerge some approaches to resolving it. So these new capacities that have come up that I want to put the mirror in front of these young kids and say, look what you got. It's because my survival and my grandchildren's survival depends on them recognizing that they've got these skills, these capacities, because it's exactly the capacities we need to solve the problems on the planet today, the really big problems. Yeah. So we've got the answer in our midst. It's just like a diamond with some chocolate over it. And people think, well, aren't these nice kids? Take the chocolate off and see what a beautiful treasure. The world depends on us seeing it. Yeah. So, yes, young people definitely have different life conditions which have brought out a higher level of cognitive complexity earlier than it did for us.
Exactly.
That's so important to remember. It's nothing in personal about these kids. It's really the conditions in which they find themselves. Exactly. And these are things that can happen to anybody, anywhere. And they can, if life conditions deteriorate, they can move down that cognitive scale too.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, and we were later in that because the conditions for us came later. Yeah. In our aging process, let's say. No, so we met it. They met it before. I mean, more or less at the same time. The conditions was there, but they were younger and we were older. So we got this understanding. Now I'm here. How did I get here? much later. So, but it's really exciting, and I like how you name that, this understanding, which when we are in orange circles isn't understood at all. No, you have to be scientifically detract it. And this, when you talked about knowing, and feeling, and understanding, I think these three things. No? Feeling comes in, as you said, in the green level, but this knowing, I think this immediate knowing, understanding, knowing, and feeling together, I think this is what characterizes the jump into what you called second tier.
Truly. And the real magic is that we call that level yellow. The next level is turquoise. And I've experienced turquoise 2 or 3 times. It's not a common experience, but what I found was that if you get a number of yellow thinkers together and they share an attention on a topic and they share an intention about what to do about that topic, there can become a merging of the minds so that as you work this problem, it's as if there's one mind with many mouths. There is a collective intelligence that self-organizes and brings forth solutions that nobody could have come up with alone. Yeah.
I'm so
So there
looking
is
forward.
huge,
So
there's
looking
huge
forward
promise.
to be a part of that.
Yes,
Really.
yes.
And part of what we are doing here is trying to create something like that,
that kind of space.
that kind of space, because alone we cannot do it. I mean, already when I met Mark and he was interested and informed, and so it opened up a new world, because before I had to be silent or to explain people what I think about the world, and then they, okay, let's go to dinner or something, And it was always difficult to talk with people. And with him, we are having so many wonderful talks, and when we can expand that, and I'm really looking forward to this time when we can co-create with this, what you say, one mind with many mouths. It's very attractive to me.
But this is where we are, and this is what looking at ageism and aging is all about, because this is exactly what happened to me a few months ago, in the past year. Just suddenly realize that, I've got maybe 30 more years to live.
Yeah, 105 would be a little.
Well, my mother made it to 100. Come on, there's a good chance. Right. But I have decades left ahead of me. And I feel more competent than ever to be able to design that life in a way that I want, not in the way that my mother experienced her last decades, or my father, or grandparents,
Right.
Where there was, after retirement, there was nothing, no structure, no, blueprint of what to do next, so forth, and nobody had written it, and they just began to die.
Yeah. Right. Yep. No, there needs to be a future.
Yeah.
Ann Roberts, you're going to have her on about aging, I think, after the first of the year. And I was talking with her yesterday. She's in Scotland, folks. 60s. She's retired. I don't know if I'm supposed to say her age, but she's forming a wisdom circle of women about her age. And when I heard that, I just got chills all over my skin, because that's exactly what we need, is yellow thinkers to come together to address problems. And she's doing it. I don't know. I mean, she knows this model. I don't think she meant to create a turquoise group, but I can see that being an artifact of bringing people together around understanding wisdom. And if they clarify their problem and all of them attend to it, there might be profound things. I mean, the wisdom circles is not a new idea. In many ways, what we're talking about here is not brand new. It is brand new because the idiom is a little different, but we can look back as far as we've got history, and we can see that elders would come together, they would sit in a circle, they would be quiet, they would pass the talking stick. There was an understanding, maybe not an articulated understanding, but a learned way of being that says, if we sit here quietly together, something's going to show up that's going to be more valuable than if we just let that tall guy do all the talking. So this is an ancient wisdom we're repackaging. And what's really different is it's available. There's so many more people ready to take on the learning because of our life conditions. And just to give some of the people who say, what does he mean, those life conditions? What we do now, many people, adults, have grown up with TVs all their life. And on that TV, they see a multiple of worldviews by just going click, 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 click. And now they can do it on the internet and with their phone, and they can be in different places in the world, and they can go to history, and they can go to the future, and it's stretching our brains to dimensions mostly people never reached before. And because that's happening, because we see different cultures, we see people living a different truth than ours over and over and over, and pretty soon we have to get off our arrogance. We just know it's foolish to be arrogant. Why should I be the right one and they're the wrong one? They're a different one and I'm a different one. So that multiple realities forces our brain to accommodate it, And that makes it more complex than we would have been if we just went to high school and went down to the gas station and worked till we died.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I have in the Wisdom Factor created something like that too, where women come together and talk together, sort of brainstorming about our possibilities, which we have to create a better world. And the next episode will be 29th of October. So,
Well,
I invite you to listen to us because
thank you.
Young ladies.
Yeah,
I
ladies.
listen in the background, keep my mouth shut, and learn.
Right.
No, it's really it's a great thing to come together, and even if it seems like a chat, and even what we are doing can be understood as chat, but it's not. We are transmitting wisdom, and what you said, and the way you say it, how you introduced Integral, I really find it genius. This is wisdom brought into, how can you say, into real life.
Practical life. But it's also a tool that teaches. One of the big things is we can't deny that we've reached elder status. We're old compared to the young ones. That's obvious. Nobody's going to argue with that. But are we wise? How do you know? And even if you do think you've got a little wisdom, what do you do with it? Now, that's a problem that could be brought to your women's group. Say, okay, let's focus on this today, and let's see what insight our collective soul can offer to all of us so that we can move on from here. To me, that's what's drawing me about this aging problem is wisdom. Where's the wisdom? Because that's what we have. If wisdom is ever to show up in large numbers, it will be with people that are getting older. And if we know how to name it, how to point at it, then we can give it as a gift we have available.
And from excuse as Mark to get out the doggy, I think this is sort of an imperative that we bring out this little bit of wisdom we have gained and not go to the grave with it. At least make it available so that if somebody's interested, and at the end what we are doing here, if somebody's interested and clicks around, they can see what our perspective on life is, what we have learned, and maybe get some inspiration. Because if you think back in my life, I always had somebody or a book or somebody who inspired me to go ahead. So we need that. I don't think development is possible with just you. Without anybody else. So the conditions of which Graves talks as people, or very much the people you are in relationship with.
Development is very creative, and if there's no one to talk to, it's like an artist who makes a painting and puts it in the closet.
True. I would like to just put a little polish on this idea because, let's see where I go with it this way. I once was lucky enough to run into the head of the White Psychological Institute in Manhattan. This is a old venerable institution where Harry Stack Sullivan, Erich Fromm, big names in psychology, practiced early on. And I thought, and it's a very practical oriented facility. So I said to him, I said, Mr. Quar, I can't let this opportunity go by. You've dealt with so many people with problems. What's the best model to use when you're dealing with somebody with deep suffering? And as I recall, he turned to me with a conceptual finger shaking at me. He says, if you see somebody suffering, you are not to put a model between you and them.
This is wisdom.
Yes. You bring your heart and you trust your heart to deliver the healing that's needed here. If you have a problem to solve and you can't figure it out, go ahead, bring a model and sort it. But when we are with a human being, set it aside and let your heart give what it has. So yes, the model, the integral model, is extremely powerful. It's extremely useful. And if you are with another human being, it's not an idea, it's a direct experience. And don't obscure that. That's the magic of life.
Yeah.
This is wonderfully said.
Yeah. And so to be integral in our life means to forget about being integral in the situation you're in. Yeah.
Truly. Well done. Well said. Yes.
Yeah, and to use what we have learned in everyday life. And I think we are about to do that.
Yeah.
And we will, I think we are coming sort of to an end.
So.
We will explore the aging, which begins right after death.
Right after death?
Right after birth. This was a good.
Well, it could be the other way too.
Could be the other way too. We will use, many of the speakers are firmly grounded in the integral worldview, and we will see how this unfolds. Maybe some are and don't even know.
True.
You know, and
I
won't.
know some of them are, but don't use that vocabulary.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's good. And I think we won't talk very much about theory and stuff, but you will see out of the way people are talking and what we are talking about, you will see the difference of what we can bring to the table. The way also we are speaking to each other. This is one of
even right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also the thing in our women's circle, you know, the listening, the way to talk together. No, oh, now I have to do it. No, I want to. No, it's a.
No, I think rather.
Yeah.
You have a point.
No, this is a completely different way of being together.
True.
So I want to invite people who see that we will do this series. It begins in the 18th of November, and we will have very illustrious guests, but we will also have guests who nobody has heard yet, but they have interesting things to say about or their own lives or their, or both, their work which they are doing, and which is always related to aging, ageism.
But not necessarily just older age.
And not just older age. We have also some speakers who are under 40, so it's not only for old people, you know.
Well, we can't listen to them, they're young. Oh, that might be ageism too.
Okay, and go to our website, thewisdomfactory.net. And very soon there will be all the programs. They're already visible, but a little bit hidden. But very soon that will be on the first page, and you get all the information. And you can watch for free. But if you want to be informed with email reminders and everything, then you have to subscribe to a list, and we will send out the reminders so that you don't miss any of these wonderful episodes. Okay, the information is the pre-information now, and it will be out very, very soon. In the meantime, have a look what we have on thewisdomfactory.net. Many thanks. And thank you, Tom. Tom will be here too in February, and will have a talk with us.
We'll see what he's learned in the meantime.
Yes.
About aging, and you are about 4 months older. You will have all wisdom.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much, and see you there.
Tom. Thanks for being
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, bye-bye.